This video is sponsored by Flexispot. I have made so many monkey's fists on this channel that I've kind of lost count. Some have been keychains, some have been decorative zipper pulls, and of course we have the fabled impact tool. I've made many different versions, some with steel cores and others even with pool ball cores. In fact, I now think the very first one that I made has almost 5 million views on that video, and it's not even the best design. Which is why in this video I want to try to make the perfect monkey's fist impact tool. Why will this one be the best? Will I finally test one of these on video for you all? And what does an impact tool even impact? These will be the questions answered in today's video while I attempt to craft the perfect endgame version. Speaking of impact though, one thing that does impact us all is sitting. So we all spend a lot of time sitting, me included, as I do when I'm shooting Paracord videos and editing them. So guys, let me be real here for a second. I've been using the same crappy Swedish office chair for the longest time. So when Flexispot reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to check out their C7 chair, I couldn't say no. So I've been using this chair for over a month now, and I gotta say it's pretty great, because the backrest really supports my lower back and lumbar, which makes all those long editing sessions much more comfortable. It's also fully adjustable so it can fit anyone. The memory foam seat cushion is thick and soft while still remaining super supportive, and the headrest and armrests are fully adjustable as well, so it's super customizable to your body, whether you're working or gaming. And honestly, I've never seen armrests like this before. They're pretty cool. And for me personally, I kind of wish the headrest could be pushed backwards a bit, but to fix that, I've just been using mine without it. And other than that, it's been a dream to use. Also, they do have a version that comes with a footrest, but they didn't have it in stock at the time of sending me this one. So if you've been destroying your butt and back with a crappy old office chair, I think it's worth investing in the C7 Max chair from Flexispot. You know, I always say if you're going to spend money, spend it on something that you'll use a lot, like this. And if your budget is limited, check out their C5, which is also a great option at a slightly lower cost. Use my code in the description to get the best price. And now on with the impact tool. And this impact tool is going to start off with a 5-pass monkey's fist around a 1-inch steel ball bearing. First off, for the uninitiated, what is a monkey's fist? To sum it up very simply, it is a knot that was predominantly used by sailors and seamen to weigh down the end of a heaving line so that it would be easier to throw. They were also adapted to be self-defense tools by the very same sailors, where they would tie a monkey's fist knot around a chunk of lead or rock, and these were known as slingshots, which could very well have been the very first impact tools ever made. And yes, before you say it, slingshots or monkey's fist impact tools are illegal in some countries, so be very aware of your local laws before making and or carrying something like this. Nevertheless, the concept of this monkey's fist impact tool can be replicated very expertly with some paracord and a solid core. The pool ball, while really cool, makes for a very large monkey's fist, but the weight to size ratio isn't very ideal, which is why I think the 1-inch steel ball core is the best. Now, if you've never tied a monkey's fist before, I'd highly suggest tying a simple 3-pass monkey's fist around a marble to really get the hang of it before graduating to something larger. And as I mentioned earlier, the very first impact tool ever made on this channel was in fact the pool ball version, or what I like to call the gorilla's fist, and it was on a 4-strand braided lead that was connected to a king cobra handle that also had a carabiner on it. Now, while this allows you to swing the monkey's fist at a faster speed, this makes the impact tool much like that of a flail or morning star, if you were to say compare it to medieval weaponry. And if you've never swung a flexible weapon before, they're actually quite difficult to control and require a lot of practice to use, as it can potentially hurt you just as badly as your attacker if you don't know what you're doing. But don't get me wrong, they sure are fun to swing around. Just don't hit yourself in the head or the family jewels. Which is why I think a shorter version where the handle is constructed to be a lanyard that wraps around your wrist to be the best. The reason being that the shorter length is easier to control, and the lanyard that wraps around your wrist helps with retaining your grip on the impact tool. With a long and flexible version, the moment the monkey's fist impacts the target, for a split second or so, the recoil or opposing force will cause the monkey's fist to go in the opposite direction of the impact, and you will have to regain control of it for your own safety. This is easier to control with a shorter lead. Also, in terms of portability, an impact tool on a long lead is harder to keep concealed and more cumbersome to take out if you were to say store it in your pocket or something like that. That's also the reason why we're using the 1-inch steel ball in this version, as opposed to the pool ball, which is obviously way too large to be portable. I chose the connected snake knots because the braid feels sort of rounder, if that makes any sense, and is again more comfortable. And unlike the Cobra knots, which are somewhat flat, you don't have to worry about how the strap is going to be situated against your wrist. Now, I also still have to talk about what these really are used for, don't I? And I will, but I've got a couple more pro tips, of course. So, why impact tools in the first place? Well, we have mentioned the element of self-defense. And the question is, would this really make a good self-defense tool? I mean, in a pinch, I personally think it would if you really had no other options. But is it the best or most practical? I would actually say no. This, of course, applies if you can legally carry something like this. But if you could, you perhaps could carry something more effective like OC spray, a firearm, stun gun, extendable baton, or even a knife. Quick aside here. Now, the key to a perfectly tightened monkey's fist is to tighten it about 80 to 90% there, and after that, the knot is going to take a quick dip in some very hot water. You don't have to boil it, but some freshly boiled water is good, and this will solidify the knot. And if it does get wet in the future, I don't know, perhaps from the blood of your adversaries. No, just kidding. It will not shrink and deform the monkey's fist. And after the hot bath, your monkey's fist should be nice and tight. Tight, yeah! A double snake knot is going to bring our cords together before we make the lanyard. As I was saying about self-defense though, if you are able to carry a blunt force weapon or impact tool for the purpose of self-defense, and you couldn't afford any other options, this could potentially be a viable solution. Also, using something like this, or any other self-defense tool for that matter, would require a degree of practice. So you might even need to hit one of these against a punching bag to get a feel for what it might actually be like to impact something with it, especially for distance and reach. Oh, and another quick note about this lanyard part. Leave a small space and then we're going to tie a lot of snake knots. And I mean a lot. I'm using the Tibetan method to make these connected snake knots, and I have a dedicated tutorial for that. It's the fastest method for tying these knots, hands down. Getting back to fighting with a monkey's fist though. I mean, look at this guy here. He's teaching you how to fight with a monkey's fist. Now, as for me, I live in Canada, which means that I can't actually carry anything for the purpose of self-defense. So you might ask, well, Tim, why do you keep making them then?
I just think they're neat.
Well, in case it wasn't apparent already, I do like to craft things out of paracord. So figuring out how to make something like this and make it the best version of itself is the fun part for me. Sort of having to use my brain in creative ways and figure out which knots are best for projects like these are kind of like solving a puzzle. And when it works out, it's a beautiful thing. And also the fact that I get to share stuff like this on YouTube definitely is a factor too, of course. But that being said, I hope it's apparent that, I'm trying to do my best with these videos, and they're made to instruct, inform, and maybe even entertain you all. I guess you could almost say it's like a form of self-perfection. Now, in the past, I have mentioned that you can use one of these to break a car window in an emergency. And yeah, I'm not saying I was wrong, but I was wrong saying that. Now, getting to this part here though, when the wrist lanyard is long enough, we're going to close it up using Solomon knots, passing through the gap we left at the start of the snake knots, and just a small section to make that connection. Now, as I was saying, mainly because number one, the monkey's fist knot is round, which means that it doesn't exactly concentrate its force on a small area. Also, the paracord lessens the effectiveness as it adds a slight amount of padding to the steel core, even though the paracord is relatively hard after tightening. And also, it being a flexible impact tool, the fact that it can recoil off of whatever you're hitting leads me to believe it's not as effective as if you were to, say, put the monkey's fist on a rigid handle. I feel like the transfer of force just isn't exactly as strong when the object that's making impact is on a flexible lead. Now, I'm no physics expert, but I think that reasoning is sound. So if you want to break a window, use a window breaker, something pointy, or a rigid tool. Now, that being said, some of you have probably been wondering when you'd see me hit something with one of these. Well, that day is today.
lot of damage.
Well, that was cool. And I do believe this should be one of the first of many tests. So comment down below on what I should impact with this tool next.